powder operators, so that's gunpowder for the people who don't know the term. That's the same stuff you use in fireworks, but a little bit better. We don't put the balls in the barrels anymore because health and safety suggested that that's why we were losing people so much. Same with the artillery. The artillery is only used in black powder, gunpowder, and we don't put the ball down that anymore. However, don't be under any illusion, although these weapons are firing blanks, they are still very dangerous to the operators, so we need to be very cautious with our drills. So volley fire from the red line, opening up the battle, telling the French there's no chance of a diplomatic solution, they're going to have to fight it out. This will be followed by the artillery, giving very obvious charges and very obvious bangs. So to load a musket, you get your ball from the cartridge pouch, which is the little black pouch on the right-hand side of the image. That would have the ball and paper and gunpowder all in one. The soldier would then open the cartridge up, prime their pan, right next to the right next to your eye. They'd pour the rest of the powder down, and at that point they'd put a ball down. They'd ram it down with a ramrod, and then the musket is ready to fire. They'd put it into the shoulder, and then follow the commander's orders. These weapons were effective for around 75 yards. They could be aimed, but the common soldier wasn't taught to be a marksman. The common soldier was taught to reload their musket and fire. A tactic at the time was to send large amounts of lead downrange with the hope that you would hit the target. The Royal Horse Artillery over there opened up their cannon fire. The way we load those cannons is, after firing, we would send a worm down to remove any remnants of the cannon. We would then send a wet mop down to extinguish any embers, because we certainly don't want the cartridge to be ready, especially when there's a gunner in charge. We then send the cartridge down, again that would be connected with the ball, and we ram it home to the breech end. That would be then pricked open to expose the gunpowder, and a quill put inside, which is basically a fuse. And then that cannon is ready to fire. The French infantry making an early advance, hoping to drive the British out of the arena. With the British line taking none of it and moving themselves forward as well. A lot of the tactics in the Napoleonic Wars was not to completely annihilate your enemy, but to actually rout them, to make them unwilling to carry on a fight. So moving your men in big columns, having tall hats to make your men look taller, was all part of this card to try and make your enemy feel that they want to rout and run away. Unfortunately, both sides decided tall hats were a very good way of making themselves look taller, so this just increased and increased to almost an unreasonable size Busby in some cases. The British infantry are kitted out in their campaign order, so they'd have their over breeches, their grey breeches that they'd be wearing instead of any good white trousers. They have their trotter pack on the back, their backpacks, that would have all their worldly possessions, including their blanket, and they'd have the water canteen on the left-hand side, which is the blue circle that most you can see. Also on the left-hand side, they have a triangular bayonet that would affix on the end of the musket for close quarter and certainly cavalry propulsion. Also on the left-hand side, they have a bag called the bread bag that was designed to carry the soldiers' rations for at least one day, depending on how many rations they had. They could carry up to 2 days or 3 days of rations if they got any. You'll also notice on the British Red Line, their jackets are of a certain style. We call them the short coats. Fashion was actually quite an important thing in the Napoleonic Wars because no one wants to die in khaki. And so everyone had very good looking uniforms. The short coat was coming into fashion because it was more practical than the long coat the British used to have and the French remained with during the Napoleonic Wars, which the French line operated. If you're on the French side, they've opened their infantry up into skirmish order. This is opening up your order, so a large volume of lead that the British are sending down would not take out your entire column, it would actually take out fewer troops. It also, theoretically, assists with the front person taking the volume of the shots and the rear person being able to. Skirmish order was good because you'd have one of your members already loaded and the other member firing and then reloading, and this was a good way of advancing and retiring while still providing firepower down range. Cannons on the artillery side, you'll see dressed in coverall breeches. They will be wearing buckskin breeches, riding breeches. They are a horse artillery unit. They all rode into battle with towing their guns behind them. Exactly the same way as now for their ceremonial. They would have studders dismount off their mounts and the mounts would be given to the driving train. They would unload the guns to bring themselves into action. Because they were a horse artillery unit, the purpose being to provide artillery firepower for the cavalry, they adorned themselves with cavalry uniform to make themselves as elite as possible. Their colours were of the Royal Regiment, which is your blue, red and yellow configuration, and they wore a very stylish type of helmet for the Napoleonic Wars called the Tarleton helmet. They also carry their sidearm, which is a light cavalry sabre, to allow them to get out of tough scrapes if they found themselves overwhelmed, trying to get their guns out of action. You'll see the drums and colours of the British unit retiring to a suitable distance. Drums were important and bugles were important in many wars, and now just in the Napoleonic Wars, to provide suitable orders to their troops. The British line have opened up on skirmish order as well, and of their line as well. Their line falling back from the main telegraph. As you can see, both sides are starting to take casualties. Drummer boys and even camp followers, which are wives of the soldiers, come along during the battle and try and provide first aid. We didn't have anything along the lines of the first aid and support as modern army has now, but there was surgery. It was very brutal surgery. There was not an enormous amount of things like anaesthetics or anything to do with dealing with infections. Amputations is usually a very good way of dealing with what we call liquid wounds, shots, or having to deal with loss of limbs through cannon shots. See the British Red Line, the skirmish line retiring, so the chaps who have just fired are retiring back while the troops are loaded. and then the chaps who have retired will reload. Once they're reloaded, they're ready to repel any advance, and their forward numbers would fall back into retiring position as well. Very problematic thing for the infantry. If the infantry align themselves up poorly, an artillery attack to take out a line of infantry. That artillery piece is quite strong for the British commander. Regiment of British Red Line would actually be very effective because the entire line would be able to fire from the right, rolling all the way through. By the time the left flank of that line has fired, the right-hand line has reloaded and would be able to pick up the fire again. This would effectively turn into a machine gun effect and would repel anything in advance because there would be no lull in the firepower. It would just continuously come and come and come. Undeterred, the French are making a very gallant stand. Unfortunately, in British reenactment, the French usually die, and we get a wonderful cheer when they do die. Gallant effort. As you can see, the French have stopped. Perhaps they'll regroup. Perhaps they thought that last charge was a little bit of a silly one. And it's cost them dearly. The limited numbers now, I can only imagine that the British commander is feeling quite confident to take on a full assault. As you can see, there's no running, it's all very deliberate, it's all very intimidating. I would not like to be on the French line now. French are opening up again, hoping not to see too much of an impact from the fire. And now the red line of port in arms. Port arms is the position prior to charge and bayonets. I believe the red line is going to charge forward and take them out. If they're successful, the French will be taken out, and I think they need a very good shield. Poor old French reenactors never get a cut in this world. bad enough. Give them a round of applause, everyone.
Section, take out that gun!